This is Janice of Dorval. The International Radio Report presents 30 minutes of news, information, and commentary on developments in the world of radio every Sunday morning at 10:30 on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal and online at ckut.ca.
Welcome to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. It's Sunday, October the 20th. We thank you for joining us. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill. We thank you for tuning in. We're here with 30 minutes of news and information on things going on in the world of radio. And we have some fairly big stories to report to you this week, so we'll get going with things right away. We also have news of a big worldwide ham contest coming up next weekend, which we'll give you some details on towards the end of the show. First off, though, we have a couple stories dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and also Hurricane Milton in Florida. First off, CBS highlights AM radio's life-saving role in Hurricane Helene. This comes from Radio Inc. In the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, radio has become a crucial source of communications for residents cut off from internet and cell phone service. Now, one Asheville AM station has received national recognition for the life-saving information and connection they provided. iHeartMedia's WWNC AM air talent Mark Starling and producer Tank Spencer were the subject of Thursday night's Eye on America segment on the CBS Evening News. CBS reporter Skylar Henry shared how the best megaphone in western North Carolina fielded calls from distressed residents, helping coordinate wellness checks and providing updates on rescue efforts. Starling and Spencer quickly became a vital link between those in need and available resources. We didn't have any connection to the outside world except our radio stations, Starling explained. We were the only two here, so we felt we had a mission to walk these people through the storm. The calls they received ranged from simple requests for updates to heartbreaking emergencies. Tragically, not all calls ended well. One family who had been in touch with the station was later swept away by floodwaters, a loss that Starling says haunts him. Despite heart-wrenching moments, there were also stories of hope and connection. One of the most emotional moments came when Starling was able to reconnect with his wife, Brandy, live on air. Spencer said, "This is the realest radio has ever been, and we're connecting with people in a way that most broadcasters never get to connect with their audience, because this is our family." Spencer and Starling's stories matched a testimony of Denise Potter, who spoke to Radio Inc. last week about her experience in the storm and how radio became a godsend for so many. In the face of unimaginable tragedy and loss, Hurricane Helene and Milton have served as powerful reminders as to how valuable AM and FM radio are, especially as the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act rallies to become law before the current session of Congress finishes at year's end. I don't think they can say it any better.
Yep.
We've been saying it for so long of how important it is, and these were classic examples and can really cement the importance of these radio stations being there.
And a related story, Beasley Media Charlotte hosts supply drive for Helene relief. This is by Radio Inc. Beasley Media Group's Charlotte stations, including KISS 95.1 WNKS, Power 98 WPEG, Country 103.7 WSOC, V101.9 WBAV, and K104.7 WKQC, organized a supply drive to aid those impacted by Hurricane Helene in the Carolinas on Tuesday, October the 8th. During the all-day drive, on-air personalities from all 5 stations participated, broadcasting live and encouraging donations. The event resulted in 4 truckloads of essential supplies, including water, clothing, non-perishable items, and pet food, which were sent to Western Carolina for distribution to those affected by the hurricane. The need in the area remains great. More than a week after heavy rains from Helene caused catastrophic flooding across Appalachia, some in Asheville, North Carolina, still do not have access to clean water in their homes. As of Thursday afternoon, an estimated 37,000 in the area remain without electricity. Beasley Media Group Vice President in Music and Entertainment and Charlotte Operations Manager John Reynolds said, "It's been amazing to have our team come together to help our neighbors in Western Carolina. We look forward to continuing to use our brands to help wherever we can." So this, once again, shows the importance of radio, the importance of, having that local community station, that station that's serving your community to help them recover, make them feel better also.
Yeah, this is unfortunately happening in so many parts of, I know here in Canada, we have a lot of stations going into networks, and you get network programming, which doesn't have any local people in the local markets. The same is happening in the U.S., where stations are grouped together with one owner and syndicated programming. You need some people ready to jump in on a local basis when something like a storm like this is localized and really dramatically affects a particular area. You want to have people in that area who can communicate directly with the audience. We have some awards to announce. The National Association of Broadcasters presented their 2024 Marconi Radio Awards. This was on Wednesday in conjunction with the NAB Show New York. The National Association of Broadcasters presented the 2024 NAB Marconi Radio Awards. Established in 1989 and named after inventor and Nobel Prize winner Marconi, the Marconi Radio Awards are given to radio stations and outstanding on-air personalities to recognize excellence in radio. The ceremony, presented by Xperi, was hosted by radio and television personality Bobby Bones with entertainment by DJ Scratch. So these are the winners. Maybe some of them are in your local city on some of your favorite stations. Legendary Station of the Year, KYGO FM in Denver, Colorado. Legendary Radio Manager of the Year, Bennett Zier in Odyssey, Virginia. Network or Syndicated Personality of the Year, Erica Campbell from Reach Media Urban One in Dallas. Major Market Personality of the Year, Rachel Ryan, KSCS FM in Dallas. Large Market Personality of the Year, Dan Mandis of WWTN FM in Nashville. Medium Market Personality of the Year, Andy Beckman and Kat Walburn from WAJI FM in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Small Market Personality of the Year is Kat Michaels, WGBF in Evansville, Indiana. Major Market Station of the Year, KTCK AM in Dallas, Texas. Large Market Station, WWRM FM in Tampa, Florida. Medium Market Station of the Year, WNRP in Pensacola, Florida. Small Market Station of the Year, KQRQ FM in Rapid City, South Dakota. Podcast, Best Radio Podcast of the Year, El Bueno, La Mala y El Feo from Univision Radio, Los Angeles, California. Adult Contemporary Station of the Year, WTVR FM in Richmond, Virginia. Contemporary Hit Radio Station, WBLI FM, Long Island, New York. Classic Hits Station, WGRR FM in Cincinnati, Ohio. The College Radio Station of the Year, unfortunately not RCKUT, but it is WPSC at William Patterson University in Wayne, New Jersey. Country Station of the Year, WXTU in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. News Talk Station, many of you have probably heard this one, KDKA in Pittsburgh, an AM station. Religious Station of the Year, WNNL FM, Raleigh, North Carolina. The Rock Station of the Year, KQMT FM in Denver, Colorado. Spanish Language Station of the Year, WLZL FM, Washington, D.C. Sports Station of the Year, KKFN FM, Denver, Colorado. Urban Station of the Year, WBTJ FM in Richmond, Virginia. Marconi finalists were selected by a committee of broadcasters, and the winners were voted on by the NAB Marconi Radio Awards Selection Academy. Nice to see all those stations recognized, and good to see a few AM stations in there. Yeah. There's been a lot of talk about, AM not being important anymore, and nobody listens to AM and what have you. So good to see a few AM stations receiving recognition in there.
We're not yet at Halloween.
Nope.
But there's already the first all-Christmas station of 2024. This is by Lance Venta of Radio Insight. So, New Albany Broadcasting Company's 1570 WLRS, New Albany, Indiana, and 92.5 W223DK, Louisville, Kentucky, is the first all-Christmas music station for the 2024 holiday season. The 92.5 Days of Christmas began running on the signals on October 1st and will continue through December 31st. The station is promoting that it will debut a new Spanish language format, Latino radio service, in January 2025. The signals cover the northern parts of the Louisville market, specifically across the Ohio River in southern Indiana. WLRS has entered into a time brokerage agreement with Thomas Hoyt's Pure Radio LLC that had started in June, with those signals simulcasting their Christian Preaching Pure Radio network, also heard in the market on 92.3 W222CD Louisville via Summit Media 106.9 WVEZ HD2. So, a little early, but hey, I guess some people are maybe there already.
And even before American Thanksgiving, which is I find that it's even a bigger holiday in the U.S. sometimes than Christmas. To start this, I think there's an exception here, though, to this one being so early. They've announced already that they're changing formats in January, so I think they probably cleaned house of everything that was going up to now and just said, okay, we're just going automated with all Christmas music until the end of the year, and we'll get ready for our new Spanish language format. I don't know. Some stations have said that their decision to go all Christmas has been extremely productive for them in advertising revenue. That people start hearing Christmas music and they start thinking of buying gifts and shopping, and advertisers jump on board and run tons of ads to get people out to their businesses and what have you. So there's a method behind it all, a reason for it all, going to this all Christmas format. It's not just people who want to sit back and listen to Christmas music in October. There's money behind it, obviously.
So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun, of course, has been quite active. There's a Sunspot 3856 that is capable of X-class solar flares. It's been a little quieter than the previous weeks, though, with the geomagnetic storms that did happen up to the G1 level a couple of times. But overall, we had quiet conditions in the high solar activity that we're at. Now, the news that came this week from NASA and NOAA is that solar maximum is underway. We are at solar max. Now, don't panic, because when we see that, a lot of guys out there are like, oh no, already we're going to go down. No, we still have a few years of being up there in that solar max before it starts dropping off. Enjoy the conditions, enjoy the propagation. Higher frequencies are amazing with tons of signals to listen to. Sunspot number 132, the solar flux 165. If you want to witness what's happening on the bands, well, you got to turn on a radio and listen.
This is John Figliozzi of Clifton Park, New York. You're listening to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Next, we have two stories coming in with news from the BBC in the UK. The first one by James Warrington via the Telegraph. BBC News to cut 155 jobs to quote-unquote balance the books. The BBC will cut a further 155 jobs from its news operations as the corporation tries to shore up its balance sheet amid growing pressure on the license fee. In a memo to staff, Deborah Turnus, the chief executive of BBC News, said the cuts would deliver a savings of £24 million, or 4% of its current budget. It forms part of a broader cost-cutting strategy aimed at slashing 500 roles from across the broadcaster by March of 2026. The BBC previously set out to plan to strip £500 million from its annual budget to plug a black hole in its finances, Earlier this year, Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, warned of a further £200 million of saving would need to be found amid uncertainty over the future of the license fee funding model. In the memo, Ms. Turness said, like all parts of the BBC, news and current affairs need to contribute to those savings to balance the books and secure future reinvestment. The bosses will axe 185 roles across news operations and create 55 new ones, resulting in the net reduction of 130 jobs. A further 25 jobs will be cut from its media operations division. As part of the overhaul, BBC News will shut down its Hard Talk interview program as it shifts focus towards live and breaking news. The BBC will also close its bespoke Asian network news service and make cuts to news bulletins on radio stations, including Radio 5 Live and Radio 2. Ms. Turness said the cuts are aimed at maximizing the impact of the BBC's highest quality journalism across numerous platforms, reducing duplications and investing in future growth. The proposed job cuts do not include the World Service, as the BBC is currently in discussions with the government about the future funding of the station, which is primarily paid for by the license fee. The BBC said it would share plans for the future of the World Service once those discussions have concluded. So most of that story obviously relates to domestic BBC, not the World Service. So we will hold our breath, waiting to hear what the future impact might be on World Service, which is obviously what affects all the shortwave listeners out there around the world.
So hopefully we're going to have some good news, especially when we go into our next story, which is telling us that the BBC boss warns of Russian and Chinese propaganda. BBC News via Alan Holder, Isle of Wight, reporting to Glenn Hauser's World of Radio I.O. group. The UK is struggling to counter a rise in pure propaganda from countries like Russia and China because of cuts to the World Service, the BBC's Director General has warned. Tim Davie called for more funding for its global services a decade after the government stopped paying for most of the World Service. Last year, the BBC ended its Arabic, Persian, and Hindi radio services, among others, as part of a plan to save £28.5 million a year. Mr. Davie told BBC Radio 4's Today program on Monday that, in contrast, malign powers, frankly, Russia, China, others, see the benefit of investing heavily in media bordering into pure propaganda. Russia and China are filling the gaps by spending between 6 and 8 billion pounds on expanding their global media activities, including in countries like Lebanon, he will tell the Future Resilience Forum on Monday. In Lebanon, Russia-backed media is now transmitting on the radio frequency previously occupied by BBC Arabic, he said. BBC Monitoring listened to that Russian output on the day thousands of pagers and radio devices exploded last month. What they heard was unchallenged propaganda and narratives being delivered to local communities, Mr. Davie said. Had the BBC been able to retain our impartial radio output, these messages would have been much harder for local audiences to find. In this context, the further retreat of the BBC World Service should be a cause for serious global concern. The UK government paid for the World Service in full until 2014, when it handed over most of the cost to the BBC. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office currently pays £104 million a year towards the World Service total budget of £366 million. The service reaches 320 million people a week across radio, TV, and digital output. In 2022, the corporation decided to stop broadcasting on radio in 10 languages and to close more than 380 World Service jobs. We haven't closed a lot of languages services, Mr. Davie told Radio 4, saying the cuts that have been made have been a result of tight funding settlements, and there's only so much you can ask of the UK license fee payer to pay for language services. For decades, this was funded by government, Mr. Davy continued. There are very clear examples where we've taken away BBC Arabic on radio, for instance. I've got other examples where you see China and Russia deliberately spending billions of dollars on that strategic objective. He added, this has to be a matter long-term for the central government decision-making to say, okay, we have to, as a country, invest, and I don't think it's appropriate to charge all of this to the UK license fee payer. It is a strategic decision and one I think we should value. A UK government spokesperson said, we are fully committed to a successful BBC World Service that continues to provide essential, impartial, and accurate news coverage and programming reaching millions of people across the globe. So it's interesting to see that all the places where the BBC leaves, somebody else, like China or Russia, takes his spot. Reminds me once again of China jumping over the frequencies of Radio Australia. They're spending a lot of money on it.
You know, there's a major world event coming up with the U.S. election in a short period of time, and I know in past any worldwide election, people around the world wonder, what's going on, and they want information. And BBC's usually been the place that a lot of people will go worldwide. They want a clear, clean, unbiased report on the situation in a lot of different places. And I think it'll be really interesting this year to listen to BBC World Service as they cover the U.S. election. It's going to be very controversial. It's going to be very close. And people are going to wonder, hey, this is the United States and things are happening and people are going to want to know about it. And I can't think of a better place to go to get a clear definition of what's going on than BBC World Service.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a big consumer of BBC World Service, and their coverage of what's happening with Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, what's happening in Ukraine is just amazing, and it's important to have that type of coverage because, frankly, we don't really have that much. Even our local media here, they talk about it a little bit, but it's often just scratching the surface. Where the BBC is, in there, they're over there. They are reporting from, the territory where things are happening. And it's just an amazing service that needs to be kept up also to counter other countries that, might have their own rhetoric, their own stories, their own propaganda.
There's so many things going on out there around the world, and it seems that BBC seems to have somebody like 5 minutes away from anything going on the planet. So if you have an opportunity, they're a little harder to hear now. There's not as many frequencies to pick them up, but track them down and just catch a NewsHour show, and I think you might be hooked and addicted to it and realize that, hey, there's a lot going on out there that we don't hear about.
Yeah, and if radio's not your thing, just get their app on your phone and listen to it on your phone.
There you go.
So we have one major ham event coming up next week.
Yeah, if you're a ham radio operator, you probably know about this. At least some of you do if you're into contesting. And contesting is a big thing in ham radio. There are all kinds of events. We mention them every week here on the show. One of the big ones is coming up next weekend. It's the 2024 CQ Worldwide DX Contest, and it's in sideband. That means it's voice. It's people talking to each other. It's not CW. It's not FT8, these other modes that are available. This is people to people. So it's taking place 0000 UTC, Saturday, October 26th. To 23:59:59 UTC, Sunday, October 27th. So 48 hours, nonstop blitz, with the objective for amateurs around the world to contact as many other amateurs in as many CQ zones and countries as possible. So what does that mean? It means that the bands are going to be crowded. There's going to be people on the air, ham operators from all parts of the world, some pretty remote places, places you probably never heard of sometimes. They're going to be on 6 bands, 1.8, 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz, which are the major ham bands. There'll be none of the WARC bands, which is 30, 12, 60, and 17. Those bands
17,
are newer bands that don't apply during this contest. So what happens? Well, it's a chaos. If you're just listening, you can just sit back and enjoy and try and see how many different countries and stations you can hear. But if you're in it as a ham operator, if you've never done it before, I think you need a little bit of practice to get yourself ready for it. And you can start doing that now, because there are a lot of these stations that might only be on for the contest itself weekend, and they're on there sort of, getting familiar and seeing how their radios are working and how their antennas are working. So Gilles, you're going to tackle it again this year?
Yeah, I started last year for the first time ever, and I got hooked. I just had so much fun. So this year I will be once again participating. So you might be hearing Victor Echo 2 Zulu Zulu India on the air. I actually have downloaded a little piece of software that's specific for that contest to help me log the stations easily and fast enough so I can move on to the next as soon as possible. This is a great contest both for shortwave listeners and amateur radio operators. It's fun for ham radio operators. It's simple and easy as a contest. Some contests you have all these weird rules that are so complex that sometimes you're just not going into a contest because it's too complicated. This one, simple. You just make contacts and you give out the signal report, which is, in terms of contacts, probably always 59. And you give your CQ zone. So, I'll be 5905 in every contact. And this is simple as that. And then you just submit all of that info to CQ, Worldwide Contest. And at some point, they'll give you your score. For the shortwave listener, it's a fantastic occasion to hear tons of countries and tons of places around the world that are very difficult to hear in general because there's not a lot happening. So it's really a lot of fun, and it's just one of the greatest contests out there. I really love it.
Yeah, some of the stations are already on the air. If you start tuning around now, you're going to hear some of them out there, and you'll read some of the sighting, spotting sites that are out there. To learn more about the contest itself, though, just go to cqww.com. That's the website for the contest. You'll find all the rules, regulations, all the details you need to know. cqww.com. We'll post it up on our Facebook group, and check it out, and then get to your radio and start tuning around. It's going to be pretty busy.
Yep. And if you guys hear me, if you're a listener and you hear Victor Echo 2 Zulu Zulu India, just go to my qrz.com webpage. You'll see all the details where you can just contact me and say, hey, I heard you on this band, this frequency. I'll be happy to send you an EQSL.
Very good.
So we're out of time.
Yep, we thank you for tuning in. We'll give you all of our contact information as usual and how to listen to our show. We have an email address. You can get in touch with us, radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show live streams and is also archived at ckut.ca. That is the website for our radio station here in Montreal, CKUT FM. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report, you can join the group and participate. We have a YouTube channel where we post all of our shows. You can listen to the current show and previous shows. Go to youtube.com/@IRR. You can subscribe and receive notice each time a new show goes up there. And finally, our X account @IRR. CKUT. We invite you to follow us there. We will talk to you again next weekend. If you can squeeze us in during the ham contest, take a 30-minute break and give us a listen. Have fun with it. We'll talk to you again next Sunday on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Have a great week, everyone, and bye-bye.